Whose folks was Glendora versus Texaco, and it was for stockholder violations. And it was toward the end of Texaco, and it was kind of sad. And it was at the annual meeting, the very last annual meeting. And it was sad to see Texaco downsize, but the people were outside picketing because of what Texaco was doing to the rainforest. And Texaco was swallowed up by Chevron, and you never heard of it again. And I felt kind of sorry for those people.
Cagney?
And in Stanfordville, guess who lived in Stanfordville? James Cagney. You remember James Cagney? It's a grand old flag and a high-flying flag. You remember him? What a talent. What a great talent, a singer and dancer. Well, he had a home in Stanfordville, and he had several horses. He loved horses. And then when Mr. Cagney died, somebody bought the farm, bought the house and the land, and then demolished the house, flattened it right down to the ground. And nobody ever could figure out what that man's motive was to do that. And now there's no sign of James Cagney in Stanfordville.
State Hospital?
And over near by, you remember Geraldo Rivera? And he made an expose of what was going on in the state hospitals, the mental hospitals. Terrible things were going on. And it resulted in New York State closing all of the mental hospitals. Well, there was one up there that was huge. It went on building after building after building after building. And it was all empty. That was a sight to see.
Patterson.
Patterson, New York. Go to Patterson, New York. Little country town. And guess what? There's a train that goes all the way from Patterson, New York, down to Manhattan, through the woods. A train that goes just that route. Oh, I don't know if that train's still running now or not, but that is a trip. Patterson, New York.
Peale.
Norman Vincent Peale had his guideposts. It was up there near Brewster, and that's where he and his wife lived.
Grounds?
One court case I didn't tell you about was in New Rochelle, and my case was to be heard there. The New Rochelle police were deficit in several ways. They were deficient in several ways. And one of them it was a lie through and through, caused Franklin to lose his license when a workman's truck hit the 1980 Lincoln, and Franklin made a complaint, and they turned it around to protect the truck driver, and it ended up with their taking away Franklin's license, which they had no right to do. And then several other cases with the New Rochelle police, but one of them I brought to court, and the judge called the case, and then he says, this case is going to Port Chester. And then he got up to leave the bench. And as he's turning on his heel to leave the bench, I said, grounds? No, what was these grounds for sending the case to? And he was chagrined, and he stopped, and he turned, and he started to say something. Then he turned again and continued out of the courtroom. What was that all about?
Orange cats.
I tried to rescue a family of orange cats, and that didn't work out. They were beautiful. There were 5 beautiful orange cats.
$125,000.
This was the year 2000. And we were afraid that the computers were going to mix up the money and that we were going to lose some money that was in the bank because, my mother and dad in 1928, they went to the bank, 1929, they went to the bank to get the money, and they had considerable amount of money. My daddy had a chain of barber shops, and he was quite successful, and they never got their money. So I've always been wondering about banks and money. And so we took our money out of the bank. It was only $125,000. But we brought home the money, and it was fun to feel your money, to know that it existed, to smell it, to look at it and count it. It was fun.
Recorders in courtroom.
You know why judges don't want recorders in the courtroom? Why? Why are they adamant about taking away your recorders when you go through security? Why? Because the recorder keeps them from lying, keeps them from the truth. They're able to say things that happened that didn't happen. Now, you would think that that is so obvious that they would no longer do that, but they can't take the chance of having a recorder in the courtroom because it tells the truth.
Midas.
Midas. Midas. What did we want to tell you about Midas? Why did the man quit his job at Midas Muffler? Do you know? It was exhausting.
Acumen return.
Oh, this dog, Acumen. I took him to the park for a walk, give him some exercise. And when it was time to come home, I called him and called him and called him and called him, and he wouldn't come. And he just disappeared. So that's the end of that dog. I come home, and I'm sitting on the porch, and here comes Acumen. How do they do that? How do they do that? Why, it was at least 25 blocks. And he rides to the place, he leaves, he's all alone, and yet he can find his way home. And Rusty Dog I rescued from a Midas muffler place. And I would take Rusty for a walk every morning. And one morning, he kept walking. And I kept following him. And I kept trying to catch up with him. But I couldn't catch up with him. And he went out of sight. Later that afternoon, the people at Midas called me up and say, "Are you missing a dog?" He went 7 miles from Mount Vernon to the Bronx. From Mount Vernon to the Bronx. He went that 7 miles through all that traffic. How is that possible? Is that not a miracle?
Wrestler.
Who?
Wrestler.
There was a woman whose daddy was a wrestler, and her daddy made so much money, so much money. And they had a place on Long Island, down on the Connecticut shore, on Long Island Sound, a magnificent place. And can you imagine what that property would be worth? For somehow or other, the government got a hold of her and charged her with something, and she escaped. And I never did know what happened to her. But I found this out, that the courts are there to make money. They'll go after people with money, and they'll try to find some trumped-up charge, and they'll go after them the way they went after us to get that money. And this woman was a case in point.
Chatham.
Chatham. We moved to Chatham. There's a lot of Chathams. There's Chatham Center, there's East Chatham, there's Chatham Village, There's the town of Chatham. And when I moved there, I asked a mechanic to come and look at the 1980 Lincoln. And when he got there, after a while, he said to me, "You're not in Chatham Center. You're in the center of Chatham." And Chatham is a very lovely place to live. Great shopping area, great place to eat, and there's a Chatham Theater there.
Kinderhook?
And now we moved from Chatham, and from Chatham, Franklin went to heaven at 83 years old. And it was really a cold. So many people that age leave the earth because they have a cold, and fluid gets into the lungs, and they can't breathe, and they go. And that was the year that we started the museum, the great big 55-foot trailer museum.
Kinderhook?
And from there we went to Kinderhook. Have you heard of Kinderhook? The legend is that Henry Hudson, when he came up the Hudson, which is now the Hudson River, when he came to the bend in the river before Albany, and he saw children playing on the shore, he called it Kinderhook. That is a legend. The Van Buren Museum will not endorse that as being true. But this is the town that the governor of New York and the president of the United States, Van Buren, came from, Kinderhook. And we went to the Reformed Church in Kinderhook, and that's where Van Buren went to church.
Contact lenses? Stained glass contact lenses?
Yes. Did you know about the minister folks who was so religious that even his contact lenses were stained glass?
Okay, that's all the prompts.